Hello and welcome to this special live stream on Scroll. What a dramatic day it's been. To remind you viewers, the Cockroach Janta Party had called for a march to Parliament today in Delhi from Jantar Mantar, where they've been continuing a sit-in protest since the 20th of June. I'm Anant Gupta, this is Ayush Tiwari, we're both reporters at Scroll, and we've been following this campaign ever since it began last month. In fact, 2 months ago, ever since it arrived in India on the 6th of June. And we've been following it closely. We were both on the ground today, along with 2 other reporters from Scroll. In fact, our political editor, Shoaib Danial, is also on his way back from Jantar Mantar as we speak. And we're going to bring you all the news, all the insight, all the analysis that we've picked up in these 6 or 7 weeks so far in the course of this live stream. Thank you so much for tuning in. To begin with, we'd just like to tell you where things stand right now. 2 representatives from the Cockroach Janta Party met JP Nadda, who's a minister in the Modi government, a senior minister, a former president of the Bharatiya Janata Party, and they submitted their campaign's demands to him, which he has accepted, he has acknowledged. The demands, to remind you, are they want Sonam Wangchuk to be released, they want Dharmendra Pradhan to resign from the post of education minister, and they want a compensation of rupees 1 crore for all the families that lost their loved ones, their children, to the paper leak fiasco that happened in the last few months. So this is where things stand. JP Nadda requested them to call off their campaign now, to call off the protest, go back home, help bring Delhi back to normalcy, which they've kind of refused to do. They're still at Jantar Mantar, even though the protest side, as we've known it all these weeks, is nothing like that anymore. The stage is empty. Shoaib tells us that it looks like a war zone right now. But they're standing in front of Kerala House now. A small crowd, but still they are around. They're refusing to call off their protest. They want Wangchuk to be released and come back to the protest side before they decide their next steps. But between the police and the Cockroach Janta Party, Ayush, there's been so much commentary in the last few weeks about, you know, the roses they offered to the police, the relationship they established with the police. It was all going calmly so far. What happened today? What do you think?
I think it's early in the morning, just as dawn was breaking, that we saw the first tensions between the police and the protesters when the police tried to put barricades near the Sansad Marg road, which leads to the parliament. And we saw that, you know, as the police was putting up these barricades, some protesters tried to resist. They tried to sit down on the road so that the barricades do not come up. Or even after the barricades came up, some of them came around 5:30 and pushed these barricades to the background. Even at that time, the police did not react. There was no violent incident between the 2 parties. Even till noon, I think, when this Sansad Marg barricades were breached, that was the first layer of barricades, the police did not react, did not hit or lathi charge the protesters. But it's only at the second layer of barricading, which is near the Parliament Street police station, when that was breached around 10:30, the police lathi charged for the very first time. But even then, it lathi charged the protesters to go behind where these barricades were. It did not take away from their space of the protest. And but that, of course, afternoon changed a lot, and
things escalated dramatically after that. In fact, Ayush spoke to a bunch of protesters who faced the lathis today at the protest site in different parts of central Delhi. Once again, to remind you viewers, there was supposed to be one march to the parliament, which never really began, but there were several marches all over central Delhi today, and we'll talk about them. But first, take a look at the report that Ayush put together from the ground today about protesters who faced the lathis from the police today.
मैं 16 साल का हूँ, मैं GW की प्रिपरेशन कर रहा हूँ कि 11th में हूँ। मैं सबसे आगे चल रहा था, उन लोगों ने, हम लोग आगे जाते आ रहे थे, अचानक से लाठी चार्ज हुआ, सब लोग पीछे भागने लग गए। एंड टू सेव ऑल द गर्ल्स आउट देयर, मैं थोड़ा सा मतलब पीछे जिनको बोला जल्दी जाओ, इसकी वजह से मैं थोड़ा लेट हो गया। एंड मेरे ऊपर मतलब लाठी चार्ज हुआ, मेरे को 2-3 घंटे लगातार मारे गए, पैर पे, हाथ पे। एंड आई कांट इवन इमेजिन नाउ, बिकॉज एक ही जगह मुझे बहुत जोर से पेन हो रही है। एंड आई कांट अंडरस्टैंड कि मेरी गलती क्या है। मेरी गलती यही है कि मैं मतलब देश का भला चाहता हूँ, इसलिए मुझे डंडे मारे जा रहे हैं। इट इज़ नॉट फेयर एट ऑल।
Happened was when the lathi charge happened. So there was this 17-18-year-old जो मतलब क्योंकि everyone was running away, so the crowd stampede situation में they piled up on that child because of he was out of oxygen or whatever. So he went into a fit state, उसको लपुआ पड़ गया. We had to revive him, we had to slap him, give him a CPR so that उसको लेके आना पड़े. And although the police was helpful लाने के अंदर, लेकिन there were not enough ambulances. वो somebody who is out of oxygen, that person was taken in a PCR and we had to walk from the protest site to here 1 kilometer carrying him.
ये ब्लड कहाँ से आया?
भैया मेरे पास वीडियो है सारे.
जब हम जब 31 दिनों से शांतिपूर्वक बैठे हैं और हम अपनी सरकार को जवाब मांग रहे हैं, उसके बावजूद भी ये लोग जवाब नहीं दे रहे, तो हम क्या करेंगे पीसफुली? हमने कहा संसद तक जाएंगे और हम अपनी बात को रखेंगे. हम भी तो अपनी बात रखना चाह रहे हैं.
That right, viewers, a 16-year-old was lathi charged by the police today. And it is important, it is pertinent here to mention that though the protesters were in violation of the law, the police had repeatedly said last night that they cannot be leading any marches, any demonstrations in Delhi today. They showed remarkable restraint throughout. There have been no reports at all from anywhere in Delhi of any sort of arsoning, loot, vandalism that the protesters engaged in, barring just breaching barricades. We'll keep following that. But one other thing that happened during the protest today is that once the protesters were all over central Delhi, and it's important to know why that happened. The Delhi police, in all its wisdom, decided to lock up metro stations. Metro is the lifeline of public transport in Delhi. And the Delhi police decided to keep the crowds away from the protest site where Cockroach Janta Party had invited them to gather for the march by locking up metro stations, which meant that protesters went all over central Delhi. They couldn't go to the stations that they were supposed to, so they went to the next one. And then they all decided to march to Parliament on their own, right? Yeah. So as a result of that, once these protesters were all over central Delhi, the police decided to lob tear gas shells at them in multiple places. Our colleague Raghav Kakkad, video journalist who was on the ground, actually recorded some of this on his camera. Take a look at the report that he has put together.
हम लोग प्रोटेस्ट कर रहे थे, नारे लगा रहे थे, लेकिन मतलब आंसू गैस फेंके गए हमारे ऊपर. बस पे जो बंदे खड़े थे उनके ऊपर फेंके गए और ऐसे आंसू गैस फेंके गए. भाई हम लोग नारे कर रहे थे, हमने कुछ भी ऐसा नहीं करा कि किसी को नुकसान हो, लेकिन उसके बाद भी हमारे ऊपर फेंके गए. हमारा पूरा चेहरा जलने लगा. अगर हम वहाँ पे रुकते तो शायद हम बेहोश हो जाते और हमें कौन उठाता. सब भागने में लगे थे.
पुलिस ने हमको बोला कि आप बैठ जाओ, और जब हम बैठे तो पुलिस ने ऐसे लाठी बरसाना शुरू करा कि हम वही दब गए. हमारे सिर के ऊपर, पूरे शरीर के ऊपर लोग दब गए और हमारे पीछे से लोगों ने हमारे पूरा ये ढक दिया था, पूरा ये लगा था. और पुलिस ने इसी का फ़ायदा उठाते हुए हमारे ऊपर ही लाठियाँ बरसाई, जबकि हम सामने बैठे थे. और ये भी आप देख सकते हैं कितनी गंदी तरीके से लगी है.
ये देखो इधर मेरे को लगा है, ये इधर मारा है. पीठ का मैं दिखा नहीं सकती, ये ऐसा है. ये पैर पे तो मतलब पता ही नहीं. 8-10 लोग मतलब स्टैम्पिड हुआ और 8-10 लोग मेरे ऊपर गिरे और मैं उनको बताने की कोशिश कर रही थी कि मेरे को सांस नहीं आ रही है. इसकी वजह से मेरी आवाज़ में सांस नहीं आ रही है, मेरे को सांस नहीं आ रही है. 1-1.5 मिनट तक मेरे को सांस नहीं आ रही थी. ये तो फिर मेरे कॉमरेड जो है, साथी जो है, वो कोशिश कर रहे थे मेरे को हटाने की, तो वो उनको मार रहे थे. तो ऐसा सब हो रहा था. और फिर एक टाइम पे उन्होंने हटाया और फिर मेरे को खड़ा किया. फिर भी वो मार ही रहे थे और वो मार के हमें पीछे भगाना चाह रहे थे.
अभी वहाँ पे टीयर गैस फैलाई गई थी. इतना सबका पूरा आग वाग सब एकदम बर्न हो रहा है. इन लोगों को कोई मतलब नहीं है किसी से. इतने वो है, आधे लोग आगे चले गए. इतना मारा उनने. एक आदमी सर तो कितने लोगों के फटे हैं यहाँ पे. सबको टीयर के मार रहे हैं और लड़कियों को तक मारा. मेरा तो ये फिर से वहाँ पे टीयर गैस, मेरा तो ये कपड़े ये भी फाड़ दिया इन लोगों ने.
It's 6:40 p.m. as we speak, and less than an hour ago, our political editor Shoaib Daniel was at the Jantar Mantar protest site of the CJP, and he has taken some pictures which we'd like to show you, and they're on your screens.
Yeah, it's really quite remarkable how things escalated so fast here, because as we told you, this protest has been going on and off since the 6th of June and consistently since the 20th of June. And one of the biggest talking points about this protest has, of course, been that the Cockroach Janta Party amassed 23 million followers in a span of a few days. And it was not able to, in relation to that, or in contrast to that, it wasn't able to turn up crowds like that at Jantar Mantar. And, you know, we've reported from the ground, we've shown how numbers do show up at some parts of the day, or on some days, big numbers show up. But it's also about what kind of people show up: middle class people that we don't usually see at protest sites, and people who confess to being Modi supporters, who admit to being BJP supporters.
Right.
But of course, that changed dramatically this past week, Ayush. Why do you think so many people, lakhs, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people turned up today?
Well, it's quite interesting. When we were going to the protest site 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, every day, I think only on Sundays we would see a larger turnout, and that would be at max 400 people. On weekdays, you would see anywhere between 2 to 300 protesters at the site. Several of them would be journalists. So, but I think it's only after, just before Mr. Wangchuk was picked up forcibly from the stage by the Delhi police. A few days before that, the CJP leaders appeal that a lot of the youth show up at the protest site because Mr. Wangchuk's health was suffering, and if he had to have a successful fruition of the protest, he had to survive, and that emotional appeal brought a lot of people out.
Yeah,
And
those were very alarming images. He really looked very frail, even though he would show up on camera and talk about how his spirits were up and he would keep protesting. We saw how that kind of emotional appeal that those images had.
Yes, the optics of the doctors coming in every day, checking, giving a medical update were very important to that turnout. But I think the ultimate trigger was, of course, on the 7:30 in the morning when the police showed up, picked him up forcibly behind those white sheets, which has become an infamous image of this protest. I think it's only after that that the numbers swelled from hundreds of protesters to, as we saw, thousands of them.
Yeah, in fact, I was there on Saturday morning after Wangchuk was picked up like that. And so many people there talked about how it had now become a karo ya maro ladai. They had lost this sense of fear that they had with the police and the government. They just felt so cheated by the manner in which he was taken away that they talked about how they had gotten rid of all their inhibitions now. And in fact, today, funnily enough, even though these are dark times to be talking about a joke, but a protester I met today was holding up a bedsheet, a white cotton bedsheet, with the words "Choli ke piche kya hai" written on it. So this clearly, as you said, has become a defining image of this protest. So yeah, in the last few days, I fully agree with Ayush. Even in my reporting, I found that Sonam Wangchuk became the center point of this protest, and his health, the emotional appeal about his deteriorating health, is what drew more and more people in. In fact, today I met so many people who told me that that was the tipping point for them. So many people had been following this protest for the last month, but today is the day they decided to show up. They took leaves. Remember, viewers, it was a Monday, but they took leaves and came because they thought that was not okay.
Right.
Of course, the Delhi police maintains that they did so because the High Court had asked them to monitor his health, and the High Court seems to have upheld that reasoning. But this is a classic case of, justice must not only be done, it must seem to be done. And if the protesters are anything to go by, they really don't see this as justice. In fact, they see this as a grave injustice.
Exactly. And I mean, not to forget that the whole, I think, source of this movement was a comment made by, the Chief Justice of India. We forget that, yes, this is about accountability from the government, but as you stay more and more among the protesters, you realize that number two, there is anger against the mainstream media, and number three, definitely against the judiciary.
Yeah. In fact, that's a good segue for us to come into what are the factors that are really driving this campaign. Because our viewers might have forgotten this, that the Cockroach Janta Party did not really begin to talk about paper leaks.
Right.
Paper leaks is something that happened after it had already amassed this following, and it found the perfect issue to go to town with. Right. It began with mundane demands, important demands about electoral integrity, judicial corruption, keeping voters on the rolls, things like that.
Right.
But it suddenly made this pivot to paper leaks. So what, in your opinion, Ayush, and in your experience of reporting on this protest, what are the underlying factors that are guiding the popularity of this campaign? What's kept it together all this while?
I think, a very important shift in this protest was on the morning when Mr. Wangchuk was forcibly removed. Abhijit Dipke and Ashutosh Ranka, they came on the stage and they were infuriated, outraged, and they pointed towards the police and they said, अब हम सिर्फ एजुकेशन मिनिस्टर का इस्तीफा नहीं मांगेंगे, हम प्रधान का इस्तीफा नहीं मांगेंगे, हम प्रधानमंत्री का भी इस्तीफा मांगेंगे. That was a very key escalation in their demands, because the crowds that showed up at the protest site after that rhetoric came into the protest were very much focused about squarely blaming their woes on the prime minister. and that is something so remarkable. You look at the protest art. We showed some images on the wall, the graffiti saying the PM is compromised, or it says vote chore PM. A lot of the slogans, Modi teri तानाशाही nahi chalegi, जब भी मोदी डरता है पुलिस को आगे करता है. You look at the art and the sloganeering in this protest, and you notice how much central the prime minister has become to the anger of these protesters. Do you think this is in a way unprecedented?
Yeah, in fact, in some ways it is. When I first went to the protest on 6th of June, when this campaign began, I was struck by how, this call for the education minister's resignation was really just the surface, the tip of the iceberg. When one spoke to people there, they would talk about the judiciary, they would talk about elections, concerns about vote chori, which our opposition has been raising for a while, which you've reported on. How all of these issues are also at play, and that's what struck me. So they were, in a sense, raging against the system. In fact, that's the headline that we went with. So in that sense, it made total sense, and it was no surprise at all that they've gradually gravitated towards asking for the prime minister's resignation. In fact, today I saw some protesters had made a putla of Modi, a scarecrow, and then garlanded him with a garland of shoes. So
Right.
it was getting aggressive. Some of the slogans would get abusive, and people would instantly intervene and ask people to stop. But that sentiment was coming out, and it was palpable on the streets. So I guess 12 years of anti-incumbency counts for something. This had to happen in a way, but who would have thought that it would happen like this? It would escalate so dramatically.
Yeah, and if you look at any previous instances where this government has made decisions that are unpopular, there's a skillful way in which the criticism or anger is deflected to, say, a junior minister, a local administration, a rotten Apple institution whose bureaucrat who's heading it is compromised, or the larger system. It's almost as if the prime minister had a Teflon coating, which made him immune, and that seems to us to be wearing off. But on your point of what's keeping this protest together, what kept it together, do you think that there were other participants in this protest
Oh, absolutely.
who were also key
It
to
was
it?
a rainbow alliance there. Every day we went, In fact, the leadership of the Cockroach Janta Party and their influence extends, I think, not beyond the first 100 meters of the stage.
Right.
After that, there's the left activists who do their own thing, and they come in multiple shades of red. Then there are the Ambedkarites, so many gender rights activists, so many queer activists who showed up today. And we would really be doing injustice to the diversity of this protest if we didn't talk about that. In fact, I haven't seen so many Ambedkarites in central Delhi since 2018, when Chandrasekhar Azad, who used to call himself Ravan back then, was arrested after the Saharanpur episode. And so many Ambedkarites from Saharanpur, Meerut, Western UP
Right.
were on the streets today.
Right.
In fact, like you pointed out, Jai Bhim was the loudest slogan today
Yes,
in the
it
streets.
was. It really was. But tell us more about the left student unions that were there, and some of them were on hunger strike, like Mr. Wangchuk.
Yeah. In fact, the three ISA activists, All India Students Association, only ended their hunger strike this morning. And they were the only ones who had started with Wangchuk. So they did a whole 23 days. Someone pointed out that's 2 days more than Gandhi's longest fast ever, 21 days. So it's quite remarkable. They're quite young. They're about our age. All three of them are PhD scholars.
Right.
So the left activists were very much at the forefront of this campaign from the beginning, for which they've been criticized and praised in equal measure.
Right.
There's a lot of left commentary about how they have no campaign of their own, they have no agenda of their own, so they try to piggyback on whatever happens. But in their defense, they always say that, this is the demand of the situation, this is where we are at present.
Right.
But on that note, Ayush, we should also come to the question of where do things go from here, right? Both for the Cockroach Janta Party and for the Modi government. We talked about how it's been in power for 12 years. It's completed 2 years in this term. Where do things go from here, in your opinion?
I think from the Modi government, number one, there have been reports where it's been reported that internal surveys of the party show that it is least popular among that age group of 18 to 35, right? The sort of the core component of this protest, and this protest just shows that it is not being able to somehow co-opt or please this age group, this constituent, despite making several political moves like getting Raghav Chadda of the Aam Aadmi Party, who was apparently roped in because of his popularity among that age group, voters from that age group. For the CJP, I think it does face some tough questions. We were at the protest today at 9 a.m. when the march was supposed to begin. The leadership of this Cockroach Janta Party, Mr. Dipke, Mr. Ranka, Mr. Das, they were not to be seen anywhere. It was just the students who led the march by themselves by dealing with the police, keeping up the slogans. The leadership which called for this march were completely absent, and there also might be questions about the way they are dealing with the government, the way they are negotiating the terms. What dialogue have they had with the protesters to sort of take these decisions?
Yeah, and one has to make the point that the kind of preparations that they would have in place every day at Jantar Mantar for that regular crowd of 500 to 1,000 that we saw, it was no different from that today. I mean, they were in the best position to know what kind of numbers would turn up today. There was nothing like that, Towards the end of Jantar Mantar, you couldn't hear what was being said from the stage at all. The call was for 9 a.m. till 11 a.m., 11:30 a.m. There was no clarity about whether the march is happening or not. On the other side, on Tolstoy Mark, both sides, they were closed off, they were cordoned off by the police. So people were kind of stuck in an oven today. And there was no clarity from the CJP leadership about any of this.
Right.
But coming back to the Modi government, like you pointed out, they will have to at some point deal with this question of accountability, and not just the education minister's accountability. Delhi's had a new police commissioner in the last week, and things have gone south so terribly today, right? There has to be some accountability. Some heads must turn about what happened today, because Connaught Place is prime real estate in Delhi. And even though the protesters did not engage in any vandalism, any criminal acts, you can't have business come to a halt like that in the heart of Delhi. I mean, Delhi police can't manage a protest, which was managing perfectly fine for the last 6 weeks. What happens in one day?
Well, you look at the precedence of these protests. Look at the CANRC protests of 2019. They happen in certain pockets of Delhi where there is a significant Muslim population, right? None of it very close to the executive power that is New Delhi Lutyens. You look at the farmer protests, they happened at the borders of Delhi, right? Farmers were not allowed in. And now 6 years later, you look at how close these protesters have managed to come. I think there were some channels that were showing us videos of protesters even managing to reach within meters, of the parliament. And for anyone who's designing the country's national security, that's a nightmare. So yes, even the Home Minister's decision to overnight sack a sitting commissioner who seemed to have dealt fairly competently with the CJP protesters initially, and then get a new commissioner who seems to have not caused any beneficial impact, is to be scrutinized.
So we'll follow the story as it continues unfolding, Ayush, of course, all of us and our colleagues, Raghav, Kritika, all of whom were on the ground today. But no matter where things go, one thing that we all have to give the Cockroach Janta Party credit for is turning up a lot of new faces at protests, a lot of people who we don't see at protests in Delhi, first-time protesters from far-off parts of the country. And in fact, our colleagues spoke to some of them today, and we put together this package of people who've come from different parts of India to take part in the march. So just take a look at this package, and after that, we'll have our political editor, Shoaib, join us. He's just back from Jantar Mantar.
इंदौर मध्य प्रदेश से आया हूँ। इंदौर से बस इसी प्रोटेस्ट के लिए आया। एक ही मांग, धर्मेंद्र प्रधान इस्तीफा दो। अनएक्सपेक्टेड में मुझे नहीं लगा था कि इतने सारी पब्लिक आएगी, बट बहुत ज्यादा भीड़ आई है। अभी तो देखा नहीं, अभी बस जैसे ही बस से उतरे डायरेक्टली यहीं आए और यहीं से बस अभी जा रहे उधर। भीड़ इतनी ज्यादा है, क्राउड बहुत ज्यादा है।
मैम स्टूडेंट की आपकी बात है मैडम, अगर हम नहीं आएंगे साथ में तो कौन आएगा मैम? ये छात्रों के साथ गलत हो रहा है। नीट हर पेपर लीक हो रहा है, ये क्या चल रहा है? ये तानाशाही सरकार है मैडम। और इतने दिन से हमारे सोनम वांगचुक सर बैठे धरने पे, उनकी कुछ सुनी नहीं गई, ऊपर से प्रशासन ने उठा ले जा रहा है। जबरदस्ती है, ऐसे थोड़ी ना कोई सरकार चलती है भाई। हम लोग भी कमजोर थोड़ी ना है प्रशासन से। जिस तरह से चाहेंगे उस तरह से लड़ेंगे, वो जिस तरह चाहेंगे उस तरह से लड़ेंगे हम लोग। जब तक हमारी मांगे पूरी नहीं होंगी, हम लोग यहाँ से हटेंगे नहीं।
So yeah, viewers, that was first-time protesters from different parts of India who turned up for the march today. Shoaib's with us now, as we promised. He's just come back from Jantar Mantar and Connaught Place. What did you make of what you saw today, Shoaib? And before you joined us, full disclosure, we were talking about where things go from here, both for the Cockroach Janta Party and for the Modi government. Yes.
So firstly, I had to come back to the office to record this because there is no internet all across New Delhi, all across Lutyens Delhi. It's quite remarkable. Today is the one day where you can get free rides on the metro because the app just isn't working. So I have a metro app and it is not working. And when I go to the guy, he tells me just go through the turnstile because there is no other way to do it. I'm just saying this to give you a vignette of the chaos that is there in central Delhi right now. I walked from Central Secretariat metro station to CP, and the scenes I saw along the way was not something that I ever expected to see in what is the toniest part of not only Delhi but probably India.
Yeah.
Right? CP is looks like it's in chaos. It is in chaos, in fact. There are groups of protesters being chased around the inner circle of CP. It sounds funny, except it's not. There is real violence being done on these protesters. People are being beaten up. Tear gas is being used again and again and again, repeatedly against these young kids. There is outrage. One young kid right in front of me in CP, he got lathi charged, and while he's getting lathi charged, all he could shout was कि जो लोग पेपर लीक करते हैं उनके खिलाफ नहीं मारोगे, रेपिस्ट को नहीं मारोगे, बच्चों को मारोगे. And that is the sense of outrage. We saw what has happened with Sonam Wangchuk, the arrest. In a way, I think it's pretty straight to see that it has led to an explosion of anger, which has led to today. And we'll have to see what this goes on. So it's like I'm still processing it, but I didn't expect to see such chaotic scenes. And I reached there at 4. I kind of went after a lot of the violence had abated. So the people that I spoke to said that there was a lot more violence. So in a way, what I saw was not the meat of what had happened today.
Yeah.
Right. And they've cleared out Jantar Mantar, the original protest site.
Yeah.
I tried to go there. There is no way to go there. They have barricaded it off. I'm a bit unclear because the CJP leaders, the Cockroach Janta Party leaders, say that they are still on the fast. Exactly where they are, I don't know. But there was no way for me or anyone else to go to that site. There were RAF personnel who were threatening violence. In fact, there was a plainclothes man, a burly plainclothes man who was driving us away. And I asked him a few times as to who he is.
Yeah.
And he said that he was a plainclothes cop. I have no way to confirm this. I asked him what his name was. He said, "Main naam nahi bataunga." This is all happening under the threat of violence. My collar has been grabbed while I was there. Although, I don't think I look young enough to be a student, but yet, because I was milling around that area, my collar was grabbed. And
you still somehow managed to shoot a video, I'm told.
I did, yeah. And that was the end of the video, unfortunately. And I switched to the video, and then I had to tell him कि मैं पत्रकार हूँ, and the cop said तो क्या?
Yeah.
And that for me captures what is happening. Like as if journalists have just no right to be there. Like his response was तो क्या? Like as if like I was doing something wrong by chronicling what was happening in the capital of India.
That really is the question of 2026, Shoaib. Patrakar ho to kya, 16 saal ke ho to kya, lathi charge, tear gas, everything is on the menu. But take a look at the video that Shoaib has shot. So we're really at that point, viewers, where we're going to beg you to please get a membership for Scroll. We had 5 sets of boots on the ground today. We took beatings ourselves, as Shoaib just told you. And we were there since last night. We've been covering this campaign from the beginning, and we've been trying to also bring you stories from all over India because it is a chaotic time. And in order to support us, to help us continue doing this work, please do consider taking a Scroll membership. But before we conclude, Shoaib, I'm very tempted to ask you. We did discuss this question of where do things go for the Modi government from here. But because you're the political editor and you have more elbow room to pontificate on this question, what do you think? Have you seen anything like this before in the last 12 years of the Modi government, or are we in new territory all of a sudden?
I think we are in new territory. It's very difficult to predict what will happen. I think the scenes that we've seen today, we've seen bigger protests in India. Let's be clear. There have been bigger protests in India. There have been bigger andolans in India. There's no doubt about it. But the location of this, I think, in some ways, the class character of this, right? There were some very elite Indians there. There were some very poor Indians there. I saw a bunch of young kids from Bihar who had taken a general compartment train and come over here last night. And there were, South Delhi elites. They're like, it's a really tough nut for the BJP to crack. And really, they are themselves to blame. They have shut off so many avenues of democratic pressure outlets. The media, so much of the sloganeering today was against the media. Godi media, hi, so on and so forth. There was Modi, BJP, so on and so forth. That was there. So much of the sloganeering was against Godi media. And that should worry Mr. Modi. And really what should worry Mr. Modi is that so much of the anger was directed against him personally. Till now, we've seen the demand has been the resignation of Dharmendra Pradhan, the education minister. But the arrest of Sonam Wangchuk, the chaos today, the violence today by the police has meant that a lot of these young kids now today are blaming the Prime Minister directly. And, so many of them would not be, I think, traditional anti-BJP people, right? But this is the politics that we've seen for the last 12 years. And they are going to be political animals for the next 50 years in India. So that's not a good sign for the BJP.
And the sign suggests that the opposition is catching up to what is happening. In fact, the leader of opposition in the Rajya Sabha and the Congress president, Kharge, today said in parliament that there are children. Why are we lobbing tear gas shells at them? Let them come in. It is their parliament. That's what Priyanka Gandhi said. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes. As you pointed out, Shoaib, we've all read about such protests. This is the first time I've seen one in my life, a protest of this scale. Before this, I've only read about the farmers who occupied the Ashok Hotel's lobby and climbed fans. These protesters remarkably have done no such thing, but they were all over central Delhi today. And like you said, they're still facing violence. We'll keep following the story, viewers. Please do consider becoming a member and help us continue bringing such stories to you.